The last 12 to 15 months from Tissot has led to many new looks from the now quickly established PRX collection, the 35mm quartz options, and new dials within their 40mm offerings. However, the biggest surprise that was teased earlier this year was the announcement of an incoming PRX chronograph powered by a Valjoux caliber and priced aggressively compared to other Swiss chronos. The initial excitement garnered in its teasing brought on several questions, one being, when will these things become available? Well, the day is finally here, and in this video, we'll take a detailed look at this new offering and give you everything you need to know before looking to buy. Let's jump into it. Now, as mentioned in this introduction, these watches are now available, so if you're liking what you're seeing here, definitely check them out on teddybaldassarre.com. We're a full authorized dealer of Tissot watches, and we'll have more details on the product page for both of these chronograph options. We have two different dial variants that we're gonna be looking at here today. I'll have links in the description. So Tissot as a brand is one with roots back to 1853 and is one of the largest producers of Swiss watches in the world, falling underneath the Swatch Group umbrella. Over the years, the brand has developed a reputation as a leader in the world of attainable Swiss-made timepieces. Although there have been several models that aided in solidifying this status, the PRX has catapulted this to new levels. Having been developed after a 1979 reference, the PRX line resembles much of the popular design attributes of that era, with the PRX referencing precision, robustness, and the X identifying the 10 ATM of water resistance. This initial point of inspiration from their archive was of a three-hand model, so seeing a chrono this early in the game was more than a pleasant surprise. So for the review here, we are going to showcase both of the available variants. Now to begin, let's start with addressing the biggest change from the previous PRX models, with the new complication being made possible by the Valjoux 7753 base caliber inside, visible through an exhibition caseback. For under $2,000, there are essentially two paths one can take when looking for a mechanical chronograph caliber from Switzerland. The first and often less expensive option is a modular chronograph such as the ETA 2894, essentially a time and date caliber with a separate chronograph module installed on top. You'll see this in some of the more attainable Swiss chronographs and micro brands out there, starting around $1,000 and rising considerably from there. The other option, and the one ultimately selected for inclusion in this PRX Chrono, is a fully integrated caliber from Valjoux, a subsidiary of ETA, which is itself owned by the Swatch Group. The two common movements from Valjoux that you will see out there on the market are the Valjoux 7750 with its vertical sub-register display and the Valjoux 7753 with its horizontal register display and a 10 o'clock pusher adjustment for the date. Typically, to get into a 7750 or 53 from a major Swiss brand, you're looking at north of $2,000 and often much more, with the base caliber being used by some of the most storied luxury brands in the industry, including Breitling, Omega, Tudor, just to name a few, making this price of $1,750 perhaps the most attainable Swiss-made watch with an integrated chronograph movement on the market at retail. This movement, though, is modified compared to typical 7753s. This movement is updated with a longer reserve, 60 hours, compared to the approximately 48 hours of the base, and in this instance showcases some additional decoration in the form of perlage across the central bridges, a few mirror polished components, and a matte finish rotor with some directional graining. It's nothing crazy, but more than what you will typically see. And again, as a note, this particular model requires using a case pusher to change the date, which can be more arduous compared to the second position of the crown to change that date. In terms of general specifications, we have a 28,800 vibrations per hour, 4 Hertz, does feature hacking and hand winding. Hacking is stopped in the second hand when you pull the crown to the farthest position, and a 60-hour power reserve. And speaking anecdotally to the level of accuracy presented by these two models, the blue dial variant kept capable time of -4 to 0 seconds a day, with the silver dial requiring -3 to +1 second a day, with each of them being tested across 5 different positions. So very solid timekeeping in both of these instances. Now moving to the second most important note, wearability. From its initial announcement back in March, there was certainly some chatter regarding the 42mm diameter of this case. Now, that case diameter of 42mm is paired with a lug-to-lug measurement of 46.5mm if you measure the end of the lugs, but the added end length will expand to 53.5 millimeters if you measure at that farthest point of those downswept end lengths. But similar to the other PRX models, both of these numbers are misleading, as I would probably say splitting the difference of these numbers is the better estimation given the curvature of the end length, which in unison makes the watch wear on my wrist like a true 42. Although I think it's probably better suited for those with a 16.25 centimeter wrist and above, on my 15.9 centimeter wrist, I didn't think it looked out of place, and you can be the judge by some of the footage that we're gonna show here, some photos. I think it looks perfectly fine on my wrist, and just given the approach that this watch is going for, kind of maybe falling in line with, say, a Royal Oak chronograph. This is a sports watch at the end of the day. It's not trying to go underneath the radar. So I think you have to keep that in mind. What is the context for how this watch is being positioned? As a result of the 8mm Valjoux caliber inside the case, it is going to lead to a total thickness of 14.8 millimeters. This thickness is rather unavoidable given the use of this Valjoux caliber, but given the more showy design and bubbled case back that will press into the back of the wrist, it will sit deeper into the wrist, and I think that's encouraging, although still going to be thick. One of the best aspects of this entire PRX collection is the bracelet, with this upsized variant following suit with an excellent bracelet that drapes to the wrist well, tapering from around 29 millimeters at the top of that fixed end length to 18 millimeters at a hidden 2-button deployant butterfly style clasp, familiar with the rest of the collection, containing no points of micro adjustment apart from 2 half links. Both with this watch and with my PRX in my collection, I've had no issues with sizing the bracelet to wear comfortably. The overall architecture closely follows other modern PRX models with a sloping polished bezel, angular case, slender bevels along the length of the case, and a signed push-pull crown at 3. One difference, of course, is going to be the inclusion of large rectangular pushers that operate well in practice while pairing with the crown and screw down case back, enabling this watch's sporty 100 meters of water resistance, solid for an automatic chronograph in any case. Another highlight of this collection as a whole is the finishing, which at the standard 3-hand quartz price of $375, or even with the Powermatics price of $650, is truly exceptional. For $1,750, it is arguably less class leading, but still very solid with alternating brushing and polishing across the angular and faceted case, with the bracelet presenting a vertically brushed front-facing surface with small hits of polishing between the links. Set beneath a flat sapphire crystal, the PRX Chrono exhibits some familiar design aesthetics with the horizontal register display, available with either a dark blue central dial surface with white silver sub-registers or a silver dial offset by black sub-dials and gold tone hands and indices. The PRX Chrono dial offers a high degree of legibility and offers the most elevated look so far from the PRX lineup when it comes to the dial. A simple printed minute track executed in contrasting colors located at the periphery, showcasing a circular line texture. Just within are applied linear indices while being equipped with a small sliver of luminescent material. At the center, stylized and baton hands that pair brushed and polished surfaces also carry some lume, with the sub-registers laying just below the plane of the central surface, each equipped with a sunray center, raised outer track, and narrow polished rim that provides some shimmer. As a note, the lume on these watches is functional and helps out in darker environments, but is not particularly strong, falling behind some of the other watches in the price segment. Looking at the central surface, the dial exhibits some long brush grain on both variants that shines to varying degrees depending on ambient lighting conditions, but is more detectable with the silver dial. A faceted date window is located at the 430, giving way to a simply printed date disc beneath while also breaking up the otherwise symmetrical package. Simply put, these dials are lovely, pairing the late 1970s design aesthetic with modern levels of finishing and making more than enough room for the chronograph registers to keep this from feeling cluttered. So now to unpack, looking at the PRX Chrono, just some of my thoughts on wearing this piece for some time now. So when this was first unveiled in March, I remember just being like, whoa, this is a big surprise. I knew that there was gonna be more PRXs coming, just given the success of the first run of them, but I was not expecting a Chrono. And when you saw this watch, you look at it and you're like, yeah, that works. No question about it. So let's talk about who this watch is probably best for and then maybe some considerations. Now, I think the first thing is going to be sizing. This is a 42mm watch, and it wears like a 42mm watch, if not slightly larger. But again, I think the one thing that helps it is keeping into context what is the position of a piece like this. To me, it's that sporty chronograph, kind of like a Royal Oak chronograph would be, and wearing that on the wrist in a more attainable package. So if you keep it in mind, and also I definitely would recommend referencing some of my just photos and videos, just looking at what it looks like. It is larger, but I think it works on my wrists. Although I probably would have preferred it to be a bit smaller, you are running into potential challenges with the Valjoux caliber and what is potentially going to be possible both vertically, mostly with the thickness, but then again with just the diameter as well. But looking at some of these photos, I still think it looks absolutely fine on my wrist. I didn't mind the wear. It is a heavier watch too, so you do feel its presence. But at the end of the day, with that sporty approach that it has, I think for those that are maybe a little bit larger in the wrist segment, they understand what they're getting here. This is a 42mm watch, 42.5mm watch. And if that's in your sweet spot, I think you're gonna love this. I think pricing wise, it's in a good segment as well. You're talking about $1,700, although maybe expensive for what some people are going to say as a Tissot watch at the end of the day. I think the package that you're getting it for when comparing it to the competition, I mean, I'd like to hear any examples of at retail, where could you potentially get a fully integrated Swiss-made Valjoux movement on the inside in a watch that looks as good as this on the market. I really cannot think of one. I always recommend Hamilton and their different chronographs when it comes to the Intramatic line. Now we also saw the Pilot Pioneer chronograph that was just unveiled. But to me, this really is that entry-level Swiss chronograph on top of the PRX design, which I think is great. Lume is going to be lagging behind some of the competition, so that's one point I would probably knock from this one. And then finishing as well, although good, I think we were just so spoiled with how amazing the finishing was with those entry-level PRX models, which just completely blows away anything else in the price segment for the most part. And then you have something like this, which I would say it's more in its league with the other watches around it. It's not going to be as much class leading, but still very good. But I think my general takeaway on this watch is I think it's a very well done piece. I would say also very similar to how the PRX, the 3-hand models with the quartz options and the Powermatics were class leading for their category of integrated style bracelets and having that sports watch feel. This is that in a chronograph version, and also class leading when it comes to getting into a Valjoux caliber in the price range. Again, I am not familiar with a watch that's going to retail at this price, that's Swiss made and has a Valjoux caliber, fully integrated, not going to have any modular setup. This to me is probably one of the best entry doors into that world. And then on top of that, of course, you're going to also get a watch that's going to look the part. If you like this style of design, the integrated sports watch feel, and you want something like this on the wrist, although going to be a little bit towards the larger end, one in a chronograph format, I think this is simply the best option you're gonna find under $2,000 if your wrist can pull it off. Retro styling, great design, and Tissot simply is just on a roll right now. But all right guys, that is my take looking at this new Tissot PRX Chronograph. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up, subscribe, and hit the bell icon, really would appreciate that. What are your thoughts on this piece as well? And also, if you like what you saw here today, definitely check it out on TeddyBaldassarre.com. We'll have links in the description down below. Also, if you want additional chronograph coverage, I would recommend checking out our list of some of the best chronographs in the watch industry. I'll also have a link to that in case you want to look at some other options. This isn't quite up your alley. That could be a good jumping off point as well. In addition, follow along on Instagram. Be sure to sign up for our written content newsletter on our website. Have some great content headed out there that's totally independent of what we're doing here with the videos. So certainly would recommend that. But guys, thank you again so much for watching. Be well, and I will see you all very soon.